her group, Patriotic Millionaires. She's the founder and president of that group, and they have a platform called the Money Agenda, which is a four-part policy package aimed at restructuring tax code and the wage floor to help working people and not just the wealthy. So she's going to present for us some information on. Oh, are you guys hearing an echo? Nobody else is? Okay. Um, Sorry, Karen, that may just be a local thing, but we're going to carry on. Um, She's going to present a slideshow going through the mission of the group, the goals of the organization, and what the money agenda is supposed to do. And then we're going to open things up for questions. I certainly have some. I hope you guys have some pencils and paper, take notes, and get your questions ready for that portion. So, without further ado, thank you so much, Erica, for joining us for this briefing.
Absolutely, y'all. I'm so happy to be here. Big thank you to the Rural Urban Bridge Initiative and to Jean and Ariella and the team. I'm thrilled to be here. I thought maybe I'll just start. I'll give y'all a little bit of my background and then I'll jump into the presentation, then open it up for questions. So my name is Erica Payne. I grew up in Raleigh, North Carolina, the daughter of a judge and a high school principal, which was not quite as bad as it sounds. I worked on Terry Sanford's Senate campaign in 1992. Some of y'all may remember him. He was a big education governor and then senator. And then I moved up to Washington and worked on President Clinton's inaugural in 92 and was with the DNC during his first term and through his reelection. I was the Deputy National Finance Director for the DNC during President Clinton's reelection campaign. And then I decided I'd kind of had it with politics. And so I went to business school. I got an MBA from Wharton. And then I worked in the private sector for a couple of years. And after a while, I just decided the private sector was not for me. And I came back into politics. But I came at it from a really different viewpoint. I think between my Wharton MBA experience and then some information I kind of came to understand about how the political system works. And so just to dive into that a little bit. So here I was at Wharton Business School and I was having people talk in class about how to, package and market Gain detergent to maximize the amount of units of Gain detergent they sold. And I was talking about how to package and market an hour of the president's time to maximize the amount of revenue that came into the DNC. And what happened in that process is that I realized that politics has a value chain like any other business has a value chain. And so if you think of Nike, Nike has to source raw materials like canvas and rubber, design the tennis shoe, manufacture the tennis shoe, then they come up with swoosh and just do it. And then they hire Michael Jordan to be their spokesperson. And what the left, center left has done forever is spent all of their time looking for exactly the right Michael Jordan and spent no time at all designing a better tennis shoe. And competitive advantage in business comes from the strength of each piece of a value chain and from the linkages in between it. When you're talking about public policy, instead of Nike making tennis shoes, when you're talking about public policy, you're talking about you start with those raw materials. What are philosophies about work and economics and humans? And then they turn into policies. And then you take policies and you call them the death tax or the Green New Deal or Medicare for all. You brand it. And then you get politicians to sell it to their constituents. And hopefully, in the process of doing that, you can create public policy that's good for people. What conservatives did starting after the 1964 Barry Goldwater defeat is a group of millionaires and billionaires funded by Nazi money started building a lot of think tanks, legal advocacy groups, media monitoring groups, and all of this whole network of organizations that over time turned the entire country to the right, taking over the entire Republican Party and enough of the Democratic Party that it didn't really matter who was in charge. Things were basically kept on going in the same direction. And so one of the things that I started seeing when I came back into politics, I wrote a book called The Practical Progressive. And I detailed the creation of this intellectual and conservative this network of institutions. If you think of an iceberg, and here's the water line, you can see the part of the iceberg above the water line, but you don't see the part of the iceberg underneath the water line. And there's so much that happens in American politics that is underneath the waterline. And the best case in point is this Project 2029 that the Heritage Foundation put together. That was either the 12th or the 13th iteration of basically the same thing that they've been doing since the thing first came together in the in the early 70s with the Lewis Powell memo in hand. So if you all go back, that's a great historic document. Go back and read the Lewis Powell memo, and he basically laid out how to, how to change a country's politics over the long term. So walking into where we are now, I'll take you back about 20 years. I started looking around and I thought the big problem in politics today is that you might have the good ideas, but you can't get the distribution. You might have the right product, but you've got to get that distribution. And usually, when people talk about politics, they're talking about paid advertising. And so the question is, how much money can you come up with in paid advertising? Now it's digital, it used to be broadcast, but how much money can you come up with to try to sell your product? And given that the other side has both more money than our side has, and they have a financial incentive to spend that money, it is highly doubtful that we are ever going to win an apples to apples war. And I'll give you a case in point. In 2017, when Republicans in Congress rewrote the entire federal tax code, in 2018, for the first time in American history, billionaires paid a lower effective tax rate than every single other person in the country. But go back to 2017 when Paul Ryan passed this tax package. After the package passed, reshaping the entire economy, he received a $500,000 check to his PAC from the Koch brothers. They then spent $20 million on a job creators bus tour, taking a bus all over the United States, trying to convince people that these tax cuts were going to lead to good jobs. It is estimated that the Koch brothers saved in taxes alone $1.5 billion. So they spent 500,000 plus 20 million. They made 1.5 billion. That's pretty good business. So if we're fighting an apples to apples war, we ain't going to win. So the question then becomes, how do you get leverage? Every single move you make has to be the highest leverage possible. And given that the expense is in the distribution piece of this, how do you talk to more people about what you want to do? How do you distribute your ideas the same way you would a product? How do you do that to more and more people? Well, as it turns out, if you get the right people to say the right thing at the right time, the natural momentum of the media cycle will carry that message for you. And if you say something really clever in a clever way, then you can get a huge amount of distribution for not very much money. And so before I started Patriotic Millionaires, I started doing these random videos and things like that. One, I threw a grandmother in a wheelchair off a cliff. I had a Paul Ryan lookalike push her little wheelchair to the edge of the cliff, and I threw her body over the cliff and posed the question, is America beautiful without Medicare? This ad was $2,500. I never took out a single paid buy. I released it. It's kind of a fun story. Released the ad. Just said, this is what I think about Paul Ryan's, plan for Medicare. Very straightforward. And then I waited 3 hours, and then I sent around an email to all the same people that I had just sent that ad to. And I told them that I had received numerous complaints. People were deeply disturbed by the violent graphic images. I reassured people that no grandmothers had been harmed in the shooting of this ad. And guess what? Boy, did they ever cover it. Has left gone too far. Okay. This ad, if you look up Granny off the cliff, this thing went everywhere. It was $2,500. 16 years later, Donald Trump blamed it for costing Paul Ryan and Mitt Romney the presidency. And not 3 weeks ago, Mitt Romney wrote an op-ed in the New York Times about how he and people like him need to start paying higher taxes. And the first sentence of that op-ed referenced this Granny off the cliff ad that I did against him when he put Paul Ryan on his thing. So again, if you get the right people to say the right thing at the right time, you can get a huge amount of the distribution for free. And so that's basically the utility of this group of patriotic millionaires. I'm going to go into what we want to accomplish later, but the utility in the exercise of the of trying to positively impact the political system, the utility is that people pay a lot more attention to millionaires when they say the same stuff that everybody else has been saying all the time. And so Let's get them to say stuff more often. So, Patriotic Millionaires came together in 2010. It was during the lame duck session of Congress, and it became clear that President Obama was going to cave to Republican demands to extend the Bush tax cuts. And it pissed me off. Like, here is Mr. Hopey Changey coming in and just perpetuating the status quo. So, I got a few millionaires to sign a letter that said, for the good of the country, raise my taxes. I named them this incredibly obnoxious name, the Patriotic Millionaires, with great intent, because I was sick of the right owning patriotism. And I wanted to emphasize that paying taxes is fundamentally part of your patriotic duty. And it's embarrassing for everybody to bitch about it as much as they do. And it's particularly embarrassing to all of us for presidential candidates to run on how little they pay in taxes. Would you ever, in 9 million years, if you were hiring someone to run your company, if their entire job interview revolved around how little they invested in your company, would you hire them to run it? You would not. And so I started Patriotic Millionaires in 2010 with this idea: get a few dozen millionaires to say the obvious, which is millionaires need to pay higher taxes because they've been stealing everybody's money for decades. All of a sudden, people start paying attention. So fast forward 16 years. We've got a few hundred members in the United States. We have a chapter in the UK. We have a chapter in Canada. A lot of stuff that happens on the tax fronts needs to be dealt with on the international. People had their money all over the place, so you got to get them everywhere. It's like a game of whack-a-mole. So we now have these three. We have these three various chapters going on. We've done everything from testified at the UN, testified at the Vatican, the IMF, the World Bank, twice in front of the Senate Finance Committee. We've written a few books. We've got a documentary film. Basically, this little group of people, couple hundred folks on about a $4.5 million annual budget, get $200 million worth of media and license to talk to basically any lawmaker they want to talk to, all because they're rich. So let's use that to our advantage. That's the group that I run. So now that I've given you a little bit of background of the group, it's a wonderful group of people. You probably heard of some of them: Abigail Disney, who is a filmmaker and the granddaughter of Roy George Zimmer, the founder of the Men's Warehouse. It's a really interesting group of business leaders, investors, philanthropists. And together they have a really simple goal. And I want to be really clear about this. Our members really like being rich. They have every intention of staying rich. They would hope that everybody on this phone call can be rich. Nobody's trying to do anything to make anybody miserable. The goal of this organization is to create a rich, stable, and free country, and to force our lawmakers to create an economy that is capable of holding up a rich, stable, and free country. Right now, we have an economy that guarantees we're going to become more unequal more quickly over time. We're already at human history levels of inequality. We can't take it anymore. And so the goal is really simple. Here's a bunch of rich people who want to live somewhere awesome, and they're going to demand an economy that's going to get us there. And we want y'all's help to do that, because we can't do it on our own. And I don't think y'all can do it on your own. And we all need it. And so that's the goal of this call. I'm going to tell you how we think of the task at hand. And I'm going to ask you to come along and help work with us and get it done. So the task at hand is pretty simple. We have an economy that is structured right now to guarantee the end of our country. So we need to reshape that economy. And we need to have a very clear idea of how we're going to reshape it, because everybody can use a bunch of words to say a bunch of nonsense, and then they get in office and they don't do anything. And so we need some real specificity in what needs to happen right now. The time for blithering, slogans is over. We have to gain the political power that we need, and we have to have enough political power to fix the underlying problem. So that's what I'm here to talk to you about. So I'm going to now share my screen, and I'm going to run through a little presentation for you all. So here it is, really simple. Can y'all see that screen? Just checking. Can y'all see my screen? Did I share it right? My God, look at that. I'm a technological genius here. Okay. So here's what we want to do. We want to win. It's not that complicated. We want to win so that we can live in an awesome country that does not have this dirtbag running it and all of his friends trying to steal everybody's money. This is grotesque. So how are we going to win? Well, let me tell you something. The journey of 1,000 miles, they lied to you. It does not begin with a single step. It actually begins with a destination. We have to know where we are going if we are going to get there. There is so much noise in the world. What is our North Star? Hold on, now my computer is not working. Hold on, there we go. What is our North Star? Another way to look at it is they asked Michelangelo, when you made David, how did you make David? Michelangelo said, I just cut away all the parts that weren't David. What does that have to do with what I'm talking about? All of this stuff, transgender athletes, the woke mob, guns, Antifa, all of that stuff. That is just misdirection. Billionaires fund both sides of the social war to keep you distracted from the fact that they are stealing your money. It's not to say these issues are not important, and it's not to say they aren't deeply relevant to how people live. But in the American political system, this is not about those things. This is about money. So stop talking about the other things and start talking about the money. Because if we don't get the money part, we're not going to get any of the rest of it right. And every time they're talking to you about transgender athletes, they are stealing your money. And every time you let them distract you, they will steal more of your money. So we have to keep the focus on the money. And that's where we're going to win. Bill Clinton used to say it's the economy, stupid. It's kind of the economy, but it's mostly the inequality that is created by the economy. And so, what are these basic elements? Take away everything. Michelangelo took away everything that wasn't David. What is the economy at its very most basic level? Of course, it's trade. Of course, it's environmental policy. Of course, it's all of these things. But the two things I want to draw your attention to are wages and taxes. If you don't get wages and taxes right, none of the rest of it is going to make any difference. You cannot grow yourself out of inadequate wage and tax policy. In 1968, McDonald's introduced one of the most delicious sandwiches known to man, the Big Mac. In 1968, the minimum wage reached its peak buying power. In 1968, a delicious Big Mac was 49 cents. The minimum wage was $1.60. You could buy 3.5 Big Macs with your minimum wage. Today, you can buy one Big Mac, no fries. That's what happened to America. This is my favorite slide in the world. If you look, productivity and compensation tracked until about the mid 70s. And then productivity went through the roof, compensation stayed flat. That area between those two lines is $79 trillion. This is money the Rand Corporation estimates moved from the bottom 90% of humans into the top 1% of humans. Partly due to the wage war, partly due to the tax system. But this $79 trillion is the amount of money that they stole from us that we need to get back. Oh, wait, hold on now. I'm having another little trouble here. $79 trillion. Here's the Economic Times talking about this. So that's how the productivity and wages go. Now let's talk about the tax rates. Here you see the marginal tax rates. Whoever has been in charge, y'all, it's changed 9,000 times. The tax rates for the richest people in the country go in one direction, and that's down. Look at this. In the Reagan years, the estate tax in 1980, 70% rate, $600,000 exemption. Today, 40% rate, $15 million exemption. Here are the companies in this country who have not paid taxes in some year over the last like 5 or 6 years. These people have not paid taxes. FedEx, right? So if you sent a package in FedEx, you spent more on that package than FedEx spent on taxes. So what's the result? This is an actual chart. That is the concentration wealth. Look at that red dot at the top. All of that money. Here's the Gini coefficient. This measures inequality. It's just skyrocketing. The fact is we've created a game of economic Jenga where you pull from the bottom, you pull from the middle, and you load it all on the top. And of course it was going to fall down. So it fell down. It's falling down. What happens right now? We got 40% of people in the United States of America make less than the median cost of living for a single adult with no children. What percentage of people are worried about the price of groceries? Is it 10%, 20%? No, it is 86% of people who live in this country are worried about the price of groceries in the richest place in the country. The affordability crisis, it's not just a buzzword. People can't afford to do anything because wealthy people stole all of their money. 40% of single people with no kids can't make ends meet. Here you see right here, 40% make under $20. 70% make less than the single cost of living for a single adult with no children. And whose fault is it? It's basically the fault of all the major corporations. Here you have a giant hole being dug by a backhoe and a little kid. That's basically what we're doing. Corporations are digging the biggest hole, and we are trying to fill it with a teeny little shovel from a kid. Jeff Bezos might be one of the worst humans on the planet, but he got off that his little joyride and he thanked every single Amazon employee because you guys paid for this. Jeff Bezos's joyride into space was paid by every single employee he has that he pays less than the cost of living. So look at this job listing. And you do this anywhere. Here is a delivery station warehouse associate making $18.50 an hour. To hear Jeff Bezos talk about it, that's a nice salary. 18.50 an hour times 40 hours equals about 38,000. Well, if you look at Mills River, North Carolina, how much does it actually cost to live in Mills River, North Carolina? The cost of living for a single adult with no children in Mills River, North Carolina is $47,000. If you work 40 hours a week, you make 38,000. So that 8,600 bucks, that paid for a little bit of Jeff Bezos's rocket ship. Congratulations. This is Amazon just as a whole company. Amazon's their store profit, 30 billion. Each Amazon warehouse worker is underpaid by about 9,000. There are 700,000 Amazon warehouse. Do you see how it goes? It just goes. Every single person is paying a little bit for Jeff Bezos's rocket ship. Revenues, total revenues, $700 billion. They have 1 million US employees. Where do you think they got their profits from? They got them because they exploited each and every single one of the people who work there, except for a small number of people in the C-suite. Here's McDonald's. Did y'all see that video where he took the little teeniest, not very big bite out of this thing and it became a meme? It was really funny. Anyway, what's not funny is that the McDonald's CEO makes 21 million, makes $20 million a year. And if you look up, basic job listing for McDonald's, you might see $8 an hour. You might see $9 an hour. Maybe you'll go up to $14 an hour. This guy's making $19 million. And the CEO pay relative to everybody who does the work, here's about how it went. About 20 to 1 in 1965, jump forward to 2023, it's around 500 to 1. Here are employees with the highest number of SNAP benefits. Recognize any of those companies? Look at that deep hole. So the question is, do you have to exploit your workers in order to make money? Well, Henry Ford, who is a racist, anti-Semite, sexist, and like a basically generally horrible human being, he actually raised the pay of his warehouse workers, what is that thing called? The assembly line workers. In 1914, he raised them to $5 per day for an 8-hour day. He did it because he thought that was good for business. What is the equivalent of that today? That's $20 an hour today. The cost of living in America is not $15 an hour. The next time a lawmaker proudly tells you that they support a $15 minimum wage, tell them thanks, but no thanks. That ain't getting close to cutting it. You can actually figure out what the cost of living is, not that our government has bothered to. The poverty line right now comes in at around $7 an hour, but you can figure out how much it costs to live in the country. MIT has done it. If you Google the MIT living wage calculator, take a look at that. It's fascinating. Go to every county, every town, every state. Here's West Virginia. West Virginia, the least expensive state in the country. A single person with no children needs about $20 an hour to put food in their mouth and a roof over their head. And I want to emphasize the living wage calculator provides $9 per day for food. So this ain't highfalutin living. $20 an hour. North Carolina, where I'm from, it's right in the middle. It's along with most of the swing states. It's around $22 an hour, higher in Charlotte, lower in the rural areas. Hawaii is a lot higher than this. Hawaii is $31 an hour. So it runs the range, but none of them are 15. So what do we need to do here? It's like we've got this tax system that's a mess. We've got the wage system that's a mess. The bottom is falling out of the wage floor. The tax system is a joke. So patriotic millionaires into this situation say, all right, what do we want to do again? We want a rich, stable, and free country. We want an economy that can support a rich, stable, and free country. So the goal is to have an economy that is capable of building the kind of country that we want. So here's what we think we should do. Number one, absolutely no new taxes on anybody who makes less than $1 million a year or has less than 5 million in assets. Maybe at some point in the future, if they implement Medicare for all and you're paying for your health insurance through taxes instead of through your employee, maybe some sort of fee for that. We'll leave that to the future. But for as we sit here right now, not a single new tax on somebody who makes less than a million or has less than 5 million in assets. That's number one. Number two, treat everybody's money equally. Doesn't matter how you make it. Right now, working people pay higher tax rates than every single other group of people in the country. Capital gains rates, you get a 50% off coupon. If you inherit it, you basically don't pay taxes. So treat all money equally. And again, over $1 million a year. So ordinary income, that's what you make from a job, both realized and unrealized capital gains. I want to emphasize unrealized capital gains and inheritance income. All of that should be taxed at exactly the same rate. Number three, create a cost of living exemption on federal taxes. It's around $45,000 a year to live anywhere in the country. The federal government begins taxing people when they make $16,000 a year. People already pay state taxes, local taxes, property taxes, Medicare taxes, Social Security taxes. Don't forget those fees and fines. The next time you get a $200 moving violation, that's because people don't pay income taxes where you live, so they make it up through fees and fines. We need a cost of living exemption on federal taxes. It is the single easiest way to deliver material relief to people who are currently struggling to make the ends meet. Let's remind ourselves that 86% of people are worried about the price of food. In order so that the government doesn't have to cut services for that, we want people like our members to pay for it. Number four, require a cost of living wage for large corporations. What we should do is raise the wage floor to the actual cost of living. Not to get into too much legislative strategy, but there's a 60 vote threshold on wage policy. We've tried for 15 years to get the minimum wage raised at the federal level. It's not going to happen. What can happen is a 51 vote threshold, big tax penalty on the biggest corporations who don't pay the cost of living. So we want to get that implemented. And number five, the fifth principle is democracy is more important than billionaires. So let's get rid of billionaires. We have introduced two of these ideas in the House and Senate. So remember, no new taxes. That's our red line. Treat all money equally. The Equal Tax Act was introduced by Delia Ramirez in the House and by Senator Markey in the Senate. This equalizes ordinary income and capital gains rates over $1 million. This is one of the most powerful changes that we could implement immediately. If you are looking for something to support, the Equal Tax Act is a fantastic piece of legislation and it fulfills one of these key principles. We've also introduced the Working Americans Tax Cut Act. It's fun to say, it's WATCA. This puts in a cost of living exemption on federal taxes. Everybody, if you make less than the median cost of living for a single adult with no children, your federal tax responsibility will be eliminated entirely. That'll put a few $1,000s in the pockets of these folks who are currently taxed into poverty. We'll have a little bit of a benefit up to around 80,000, which is at 175% of that. This bill and all of those lost revenues, it's 1.6 trillion in a tax cut. 100% of that 1.6 trillion is picked up by a surtax on people like our members with incomes over $1 million a year. It's a small surtax on the first dollar of the second million. So again, anybody under $1 million not paying it. This surtax is a little bit revenue positive, but it's basically a shift off of working people who can barely make ends meet onto millionaires. Those are two pieces. So if I'm going to just click back if I can. Well, I wanted to save that one. Hold on. So see this? No new taxes for people over $1 million. Number two has been introduced in the House and Senate. Number three has been introduced in the House and Senate. Number four will be introduced in the House and Senate before the end of this year. And number five, we want to create a presidential commission on oligarchical wealth eradication and resilient democracy. So this will be a number of policies that we will get implemented when the next president goes into office. So, all right. So so we're here to win both showcase showdowns. We've got to win a sufficient amount of political power to capture the government. And then we've got to take that political power and turn it into real reform. So what we are doing right now is socializing these concepts, these principles, turning them into legislation. So when a new president takes office in 2029, in the first 100 days, they can sign three pieces of legislation into law: the Equal Tax Act, the cost of living exemption, and the cost of living wage. And then they can put into place a 9/11 Commission on Oligarchical Wealth and take the recommendations of that. And then we're off to the races and we fix the problem. If you want some additional resources, we've written two books: Tax the Rich, How Lies, Loopholes, and Lobbyists Make the Rich Even Richer. That's the book that I wrote with our chairman. Pay the People, Why Fair Pay is Good for Business and Great for America. And then a documentary film called The Deciders, which you can get on the internet. If you want a free copy, let me know. It follows a project that we started going into a really poor, deep red, working class area of North Carolina after traveling all over the country to a lot of red areas and talking to people about the economy. We settled in North Carolina in a little town called Whiteville. And this tells the story of what happens when you bring working people together across the political aisle and explain to them how politicians of both parties are rigging the economy against them. It's a really fun movie to watch. It was a great exercise, and the woman who is just the heart and soul of the movie has actually decided to run for office, and she is running against the House Majority Leader in North Carolina, one of the most powerful people in the state. And she learned how the economy was rigged against her, and she said, "Screw it, I'm gonna run against this guy." So, in addition to Patriotic Millionaires talking to the media all the time, talking to lawmakers all the time, putting these laws together and trying to get them on board, we've also taken this message out across the state of North Carolina. We've got a headquarters in Whiteville now, and we are spreading the money agenda across the state. And trying to share the good news with people that we can actually fix these problems that we face. And the fact is, it's not all that difficult. So that is my presentation. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And I'll just say, I think Jacob Brooks is on the phone. He can maybe wave his hand, but Jacob Brooks is our North Carolina director, working with me on all this, and he loves coming to these. He comes often to y'all's meetings every week. So I just want to make sure to give a shout out to him, and he'll have a chance to say hello in a minute. So
Hey, thanks,
any
Erica. Sorry.
questions?
Sorry.
Oh,
I'm
there you are.
here.
Hey, Jacob. How you
I'm,
doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Just made back. I got back from Whiteville, and I'll drop a link to Deciders here in the
Oh,
chat.
thank
Yeah, it's fun. We
you.
um we we started this. So basically, it was 3.5 years ago, whenever COVID happened, when all the Republicans and 8 Democrats voted against an inadequate $15 minimum wage amendment after 1 million frontline workers died, and all the Democrats are up there scratching their heads why working people think they suck also. And it's pretty obvious you're in the middle of a global pandemic and you refuse to pay people less than what they can live on. I mean, it was actually dumb. And so it was at that point that I decided, all right, something has happened in this country. We've been trying to raise minimum wage for 15, 13 years, I guess, at that point. And so I just grabbed some of our members. We got in a van and we drove to West Virginia, then we drove to Kentucky. We stopped people in the Dollar General parking lot to talk to them about the economy. And everybody we talked to, it didn't matter if they were a Republican or a Democrat, they agreed wages were too low, their taxes were too high, and millionaires were getting away with murder. Um, and so anyway, we then went to Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and settled on this little town in North Carolina to try to go deep and see if we can see if we can turn this whole exercise around by getting folks in rural areas who are currently handing their political power to people who have every intention of keeping them poor, miserable, and sick. See if we can't break that log jam a little bit. And so Jacob is leading that project for us in North Carolina. And that's part of the reason I'm so excited to talk to y'all, because rural folks are the most powerful voters in the country right now. And if we can move them to demand an economy that works for them, we can actually fix the country.
Thanks,
Um,
Erica. I have a follow-up to that point that you made, and I've got a couple of questions that I've written out that I'd like to ask, and then we'll open things up. Jean, maybe you can help sift through the comments to see if we've got any questions there, and then we will also call on people who've had their hands raised. But I'm wondering about the way that your group goes up against the common refrain that rural voters hear, which is like, actually, corporate tax cuts create jobs in your area. And this is the only way to financial security for you, is for us to make these sweetheart deals with big corporations so that they'll stay here because there's, a race to the bottom elsewhere and we want to make sure they get a good deal. How do you frame the argument so that that isn't as effective for people in rural areas who may think, that is the only option for a good job?
I mean, listen, I think that the Stockholm syndrome is real. I don't want to say that it isn't. Jacob and I have spent a lot of time at fairs and festivals all over rural North Carolina. And you do hear some of that. I will tell you, I don't hear as much of that as I think people think. You hear people know Walmart. I mean, Walmart just became a $1 trillion company. You think a company worth $1 trillion can pay somebody like 21 bucks an hour? Probably, you know? Um, and so, I mean, the first thing we start by pointing out is that corporations pay taxes on profits. Profits are calculated after expenses like payroll. So the argument doesn't even make sense on its face. That's number one. Number two, we have a presentation that Jacob can maybe see if he can dig up. It's our Tax the Rich presentation. It's where we took our book and we turned it into a 15-minute PowerPoint presentation. One of the big corporate cheerleaders for the tax cut in 2017 was Randall Stevenson. He was CEO of AT&T. He went all over the place. He was like, the correlation between tax cuts and job creations is tight, tight, tight. I mean, it was crazy. Saying all this, the year after they passed the tax cut, he fired 80,000 people. So they're just full of shit. I mean, I think you basically just seem to tell, you just need to tell people that's like number one, profits are calculated, taxes are calculated on profits. Profits are, so that it doesn't even make sense when somebody says that, you know? Um, that's where I start when I
Yeah.
talk to people about it. And like, what else are they going to say? They're not going to tell you, you're giving me this tax cut so I can be richer. So of
Hmm.
course they're going to make up something. So, I mean, what do you think they're going to do? You wouldn't do it if they told you the truth. I think sometimes I mean, I'll tell you what, y'all, when we started doing these presentations to people, the one that we do for the one we do for rural voters is a little bit different than this, but it has a lot of the elements in this. What I see from people is that I finally explained to them something they really knew already. I just put some charts and graphs around it. People know what's going on. They feel what's going on. They see what's going on. They see Jeff Bezos in his little blue suit, and they know people who work at Amazon are sleeping in their cars. So I think they know the problem. The biggest problem is they don't think anybody's going to fix it.
Mm.
That's the issue. And the thing is, they're right. Right. So quit telling people something that's not true. The problem that we have had for the last decade is we don't have an opposition party. I mean, Bill Clinton was the best Republican president since Ronald Reagan. Think about it. He passed NAFTA,
Mhm.
Wall Street deregulation, welfare reform. He screwed over poor people with welfare reform, Wall Street deregulation. I worked in the middle of it. I mean, they broke the economy. That's it. And it's because of him. And it's because of what he put into place with Bob Rubin. Does anybody remember that Time magazine cover with the three of them acting like they were Jesus, God, and the Holy Spirit? It was like the Holy Trinity. They had Bob Bob Rubin, Alan
Alan
Greenspan,
Greenspan.
and who was the
Hmm.
other one? I can't remember whoever the third one. Well, so and that's one thing. When I went to Whiteville, North Carolina moved 14 points Democrat to Republican over the last 20 years. Why? Because NAFTA decimated their community.
Hmm.
Where is MAGA the strongest in the United States of America? It's where NAFTA decimated communities. And even today, Bill Clinton won't even admit it. I mean, we have to let him off the hook now because whatever, but um, he won't admit it. So, I mean, Democrats talking about, oh, why do people vote against their own economic self-interest? Because you screwed them over too. That's why. And you hadn't made up for it. And then you got in the middle of a COVID pandemic and 8 Democrats are voting against. So enough already. So part of
Yeah.
the exercise here is to tell Democrats how to be an opposition party and to give them the
Mm.
product that they need to sell in order to prove that they want to be an opposition party. So this
What do
is
you?
this is and then I'll just wrap it. I mean,
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
the cost of living tax exemption, this bill that takes taxes off of 130 million people and pays for it with a very small surtax on the first dollar of the second million of 650,000 people. This is nothing but a tax shift from 130 million people to 650,000 people, from working people to the donor class. 30 Democrats are not on that bill. You think they help working people? What else are they going to do? Right? So we want to help Democrats learn how to be an opposition party by giving them something that will actually fix the problem that they can run on. And then if they ain't willing to run on it, they need to lose also. I need to be very clear. They need to lose also. The end. If your oncologist handed you a Band-Aid, you would fire your oncologist. The end. This is not time for small, stupid non-solutions.
Yeah, and it's a good metaphor because it is life or death for a lot of people. There's
It's
record
life or death for
levels.
it's life or
Yeah.
death for democracy around the world.
Yep.
This is if the United States is the queen on the chessboard, if the United States falls, the entire world falls with it. You add AI onto that, and basically humanity is done except for these losers, these tech oligarchs who are gonna like make it through to the other side. I mean, give me a break.
So, what do you say to people who are urban progressives and they are very concerned about immigration, guns, abortion, climate, trans rights? Um, sometimes people can find it dismissive if you say, no, we've got to be strategic and we're focusing on this one thing. How do you talk to people in that space without activating those culture war tripwires? And how do you help them hold their own Democrats responsible? Because we also hear vote blue no matter who quite often. Like that's going to solve the problem.
That's a terrible slogan. But don't vote blue unless they're going to do something for you. That's a better
Ah, and
slogan.
it rhymes.
Um, so here's what I would say. A lot of people come to politics, and frankly, the entire left is social movements. I mean, the big institutions are like women's groups, civil rights groups. That's our birthplace. And it comes from the human experience, and that's really important, and it should be revered and valued. It just can't replace the discussion about money. Hold your social views, hold them. People come by those honestly, and understand that when all the billionaires are talking about those social views, they're stealing your money. Understand when politicians are talking about different kinds of groups, they're stealing your money. So hold respect for all. I'm not into the God thing, but like there aren't any mistakes, right? They're all kinds of different beings. They're all valuable and beautiful, fantastic. Let's talk about the money, because its entire exercise, y'all. What is the economy? The second chapter in our book is what the fuck is the economy, and why do these people keep calling it the political economy? It's just a bunch of rules that people make up, and all those rules are made in the political system. We have to structure the distribution of resources in such a way that enough people get enough stuff that they chill out. That's it. It's not that complicated. And so you can either kill people, jail people, or feed people. I prefer to feed people. I think it's a better way to live. Right. But lots of regimes had tried to do the first two. Donald Trump certainly seems to be trying to do some combination of those. But at the end of the day, at the end of the revolution, whatever happens, you still have to structure an economy so that enough people get enough stuff that they're calm enough that the society can go on. That's it. It's not that complicated. It's like a math exercise. Math is not that emotional at the end of the day. It feels emotional, but it shouldn't feel emotional. This is here's the money. How do you divide it? And how do you structure it in a way so that it makes sense? And so that's what the money agenda really tries to do. As I said, our members love being rich. They like being capitalists. They like doing business. They want to keep on doing business. They don't want to live in some commie land. They really don't. They want to do the businesses. That's how they made their money. And so this is how do you structure democratic capitalism? Because capitalism and democracy are inherently in conflict. They are. Admit the conflict, and then structure it so it works for both parties. So that's why everybody's money should be equal. Why is your money better than my money? It isn't. We're a democracy. Everybody's equal. So your money is the same as my money. And I should be able to take care of myself before I have to take care of everybody else. Like you don't have to babysit until you're old enough. You have to be 12 to babysit. So take care of yourself. That's the very first and most important thing. And then when those folks can take care of themselves, they can hold more of the need. And then the biggest thing is connect the fortunes of American business to the fortunes of American families. There is a profound disconnect, and we have created a business model that is based on human exploitation. And we can use the tax system to end the exploitation and pre-distribute the proceeds of business and then fix the redistribution. So this pre-distribution side it is at least as important as the redistribution side. And the other thing to remember is that some of tax policy is to like go get this excess amount of money that's being concentrated here and put it into programs that are good for everybody. And some of that is like paying for or financing programs that people need. But the other part of that, the biggest part of tax policy that Patriotic Millionaires works on, tax policy is the only tool you have to break up oligarchical wealth concentration. That's the only tool. And so if you on some level, you could argue that you don't need another dime going into the federal government because it doesn't work like state and local governments. It's not dollar in, dollar out. You just need enough tax revenue to support the financing of the things that you want to invest in, but you don't need dollar for dollar. So your main task of tax policy is to make sure that these people don't become oligarchs. That's what the goal is, whether it brings in a dime or not. So the other thing you have to look for is when folks on the left say, don't support a tax cut because we need all that revenue going into programs. All due respect, you can have the same amount of revenue, but who pays this is very relevant. So our members, I want to be clear, our members do not take any position on government spending. Okay. Because we do not believe millionaires have any more of a right to decide what the government spends its money on. People, through their democratically elected representatives, should decide what we need to spend money on. The goal of Patriotic Millionaires is to make sure that our members pay for more of it. The only exception to that is that we support every bit of IRS funding because that's your accounts receivable. So when Republicans go in, the very first vote that they did when they took control of the House was to get rid of the $80 billion of additional IRS funding that whatchamacallit, Biden put in. If you really wanted the government to have money, why would you fire your accounts receivable department? The purpose was to make sure that rich people don't pay their taxes. That was the point. And they owe us $1 trillion right now as we sit. So the only government funding, in short, that Patriotic Millionaires talk about ever is IRS funding. All the rest of it is just we want to pay for more of it.
I've got one more question, and then I'd love to open it up for the chat, but I'm very aware that we're a little under 10 minutes before 5. Do you have time, Erica, to answer a few more
Oh,
questions?
yeah, I'm happy. I thought we were going until 5:15, so I can do whatever.
Okay, great. That's wonderful. So, um, one question that we've got actually from Jean is, can these ideas become law as long as both parties need to raise tons of campaign cash from deep-pocketed donors. And I'll add to that, super PACs, dark money. Do you feel like there's a way for
Yes,
us to
yes,
get
yes, yes,
leverage
yes,
against
yes,
that?
yes, yes, yes. First of all, yes, the money is important. The money ain't everything. Y'all, Kamala Harris had $3 billion and it's zero message. Donald Trump had $1.5 billion and he had a message. He had a shitty message, but he had a message. Kamala Harris lost and she had $3 billion. If she had a message, maybe she didn't need $3 billion. Number one. Number two, these ideas are incredibly popular. Number one. Number two, they're just common sense and they ain't that hard to explain, right? Treat everybody's money equal, give people a cost of living, let people take care of themselves before they take care of somebody else, connect business to families. That's it. Give her the billionaires. Anybody can run on this. Anybody can win on this. If you say the words out loud, people will follow. And so, yes, but that's the reason. Here's the thing. That's the reason we're socializing these laws now. That's why advancing these laws now is so important. And that's why whoever y'all's representatives are, if they are not on equal tax or they are not on the cost of living exemption, the Working Americans Tax Cut Act is the name of the bill. WATCA. If your representative is not on either one or both of those bills, they need to hear from you daily, because what needs to happen is we've got to socialize these ideas. It's kind of a pain in the ass to get legislation done, y'all. There are all these little details that you don't expect when you go in there. I can't even tell you like the journey that we went through on both of these. But now we've been through it. And so, like the Working Americans Tax Cut Act, which would put thousands of dollars into the pocket of working people, cost the government nothing, and make rich people pay a little bit more. That bill has 20 Democrats on it right now, from Chris Van Hollen on more of the left, Bernie Sanders, more on the left, all the way to Gallego, Kirsten Gillibrand, Chris Coons, Linda Blunt Rochester. I mean, this is an ideological spectrum, the likes of which have never been seen before. Get the rest of these Democrats on the bill. You got to socialize them so that when you go into office, you can pass them. Because here's the thing, we're not that far away from it, y'all, right? So we go into this, we're going to win the House. Is Hakeem Jeffries going to put these three laws up in HR 1, House Resolution 1? What's that going to look like? You can get these laws passed in the House and you can get them passed in the Senate. And by the way, if we happen to take the Senate in the fall, you put in the Working Americans Tax Cut Act, that thing's going to pass in the Senate. Then what's President Trump going to do? I guess I'm not going to pass that. Of course he's going to sign it. Like, we could get some of these laws passed before we have a new president. But the point is to lay the laws out. And then when the presidential campaign starts in earnest in November, you got to ask those presidential candidates. Like, for example, Gavin Newsom, that dude has disqualified himself from being president of the United States with his reaction to this California wealth tax. I don't care if he doesn't like the California wealth tax. I don't care if he doesn't like how it's structured. If he doesn't like how it's structured, he should have said, I don't love how this one is structured, but I'm immediately hosting a meeting with all of my governor friends all over the place, and we're going to create an interstate compact, because billionaires are incompatible with democracy. That's what he should have done. What he did instead was suck up to all the billionaires. So fuck him. He doesn't get to be president. That's number one. Number two, Gretchen Whitmer, governor of Michigan. Everybody thinks she's some middle, whatever they think of her. Okay. That woman ripped up the strongest wage floor in the country after it had gone through a ballot initiative, a legislative fight, and a judicial fight. Millions and millions and millions of dollars, millions of people hours spent passing that thing. And that woman ripped up that wage floor, one of the strongest in the country, a day before it went into effect. Why? Because tipped workers were going to make one fucking more dollar per hour than they made the day before. She has disqualified herself from the presidency. Anyway.
Um, One of our chat members, and I'm really sorry, there's scratching in the background because my dog wants to go on a walk. Um, so one of the questions from our chat members um, is, what is the money agenda's effect on the budget deficit and the national deficit? And has your group considered the real estate depreciation tax deduction? That also appears to be part of the problem. And I want to try to get to all of these. So we've got
So I'll talk
four
really fast
hands
and I'll
up.
have shorter answers. So here's the
Okay.
thing. What you want to think of the money agenda as your Christmas tree, get that Christmas tree up, and then hang some additional ornaments on it. This is not every single thing that needs to be done, but it is the first thing that needs to be done. And it's the thing until you do it, nothing has been done. And so that's how you should think of the money agenda. It's not everything, but remember, strategy is knowing what door to open first so that you can gain enough power to open the next one and the next one and the one after that. There are lots of other ideas that we are supportive of. This is the anchor set of ideas.
I love that. So pick door number one, folks, the door with the strategy behind it. Um, One of our chat members says, Indiana here, we are being hammered by private equity buying up utility companies, data centers, SMRs driving up demand, and now forced coal plants staying open, so our utility bills are skyrocketing. What can we do for folks struggling right now who are too exhausted to politically engage? We are a straight party ballot state with entrenched gerrymandering. The only response we hear is one day general strike, which is nothing.
So, what would I do if I lived in Indiana? Is basically the question. I would go talk to every lawmaker about the Working Americans Tax Cut Act. I think it's going to be extremely difficult for lawmakers to get out of supporting that. So if I were you in Indiana, I would focus my attention on that. Will you give 130 million people a tax cut and have the Epstein class, the donor class, the billionaire class, however you want to call them, pay for it? I would focus and isolate because that's a hard one for somebody. That's a really hard one for somebody to get out of. That's why we crafted this bill the way that we crafted it.
Yeah, put their feet to the fire.
Yes.
Another question is, I'm curious what the DNC's response is to proposed legislation and the ideals of the group in general. And are there any prospective candidates who are running on these ideals that, so we heard some of the bad apples. Are there good apples?
Yeah, so I'll tell you who's a really good apple is Chris Van Hollen is somebody who I think is emerging. He is not typically mentioned in the presidential breath. I think most people think he'll end up being Senate Majority Leader at some point, but whichever way that shakes out, I think that he is somebody who is very worth paying attention to. I have not been particularly impressed with any of the presidential candidates to date. I will say politicians are the lagging indicator. They are not typically groundbreakers themselves. And so the goal here is to get every single one of the Democratic presidential candidates to run on these basic ideas. That's the goal. And to have them have to argue for or against them. So you're creating basically a litmus test for them.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up to
Oh, and
our
people act like
members.
they like the patriotic millionaires. Yeah. I mean, the party officials act like they like us. A bunch of our members give them a bunch of money. So I think they sometimes have to pretend like they like us. And so they pretend to listen to us. But they're not super inclined to do any of this stuff, y'all. I mean, they're
Hmm.
just not. And so that's why we beat on them constantly, and we have a big poll coming out that shows that like our idea for the Working Americans Tax Cut Act is the most popular of all of the economic ideas. So stuff like that helps. Um,
Yeah, please share that when that comes out. We'd love to send it to the members. I'm going to switch over to some of our questions in the queue. So I think this is by timing. Karen Leventhal, would you like to ask something really quickly? We've got about 13 minutes left.
Sure. Thanks so much, Erica, for presenting these ideas. They're great. I'm glad there's a group at work doing this. So when I present these kinds of ideas to friends that are, say, like moderate or center right, a common response is, yeah, it's great, but rich people and rich corporations always have an army of lawyers who get out of paying these kinds of things. So what would your response be about how to actually enforce this, or how would you respond to someone who has that concern?
So number one, I took a strategy class in college. Step number one of problem solving is accept the situation. Yes, that is accurate. So rich people are always going to try to get out of everything. And there's like legions of people who make a bunch of money helping them get out of everything. My dad was a judge and people would, be in there for a DWI and they'd insist it was the first time they'd ever been drinking behind the wheel, which he knew was not accurate. Um, look, put some IRS enforcement in, but you don't not pass laws because somebody might try to get out of them. That's like stupid. It really is stupid. But you're not going to do something because a whole bunch of people are going to try to get out of it. Don't accept defeat on the front end. I think that's silly. But it does sound like something that a bunch of my Wharton MBA classmates would do. People say stuff like that. And you have to just, one thing when people say stuff like that, you just have to breathe for a second and remind yourself that what they said is dumb. Do you see what I'm saying, y'all? Some of this stuff is just dumb. People say dumb things. So just tell them that what they just said is dumb. That's dumb. You wouldn't not pass any other law because somebody was going to get out of it. You don't take you can't murder people laws off the book because somebody's going to try to get around and stab somebody to death. That's a nonsensical response.
We've got Murray Smart next.
All right. Thanks very much, Erica, and all of you. There's a resource that I share with everybody and try to get them to understand that explains this all very simply and what we need to do. And my guess is you know this author. It's Burned by Billionaires by Chuck Collins.
He is on my board.
Yeah, how concentrated wealth and power are ruining our lives and planet. And
Yes.
that chart you showed and the Rand information is in there. I'll put it in the chat. I encourage everybody to get it. And I'm telling every candidate I meet, if you're running for office, you got to read this book, you got to have it, and you got to use it. Thank you.
Yeah, Chuck's incredible. Chuck was the heir to the Oscar Mayer fortune. He gave up all of his money in his 20s and spent the next several decades becoming an expert on income and economic inequality. He is the best.
We'll also roll up the recommendations in the chat. So Murray will add that to our follow-up letter so that everybody can check it out. And we'll include a link to that as well. Dan McMillan.
Thank you so much, and sorry for the delay. Oh, no, where? Yes, okay. Yeah, just with regard to the question of money in politics, Erica, you make a good point that Harris outraised Trump, but the problem is not that the candidate with the most money wins. The problem is that you can't run a viable campaign for any national office without raising enormous amounts of money from deep-pocketed donors, which means that no idea that is unattractive to these donors is going to get a fair hearing. And I represent an organization that advocates the public financing of federal elections using a democracy vouchers type system. I just wanted to put that out there. I realize there are other topics people want to discuss, but I just don't see, and until you solve the problem of campaign finance, I mean, that's how the Republican Party, Democratic Party became Republican light, is the money chase, is the arms race and fundraising spending that took off at the end of the 70s. Anyway.
Well, that's totally true. And, Rahm Emanuel packed the House Ways and Means Committee with people, and he called it the Money Committee because not because they handle the money for the country, but because that's where you can raise all the money if you're on the House Ways and Means Committee. No part of me is denying the fact that we are a cesspool of contributions. None of me denies that. Bernie Sanders went a long way with his presidential campaign before the DNC shut him down, funded by small dollars. I really believe that good ideas can't carry you all the way there. But it can get you more of the way there. And I will tell y'all also that the world has changed. I started Patriotic Millionaires 16 years ago. When you said tax the rich, people, clutched their pearls and fainted in horror that you would say such obnoxious words in front of them. The realization that something has gone terribly wrong in America is much higher than it ever has been. And so to give you some hope in a moment where I think things are very convoluted, obviously, we have been on this road for 5 decades. We were never going to not end up here. When you reach this level of inequality, when an economic system fails to deliver for this percentage of people, they are going to reject the political system that brought it about. The thing that we are seeing now is that politicians have woken up to the problem, and even donors have woken up to the problem. And so, yes, money in politics is a problem, but I get in fights with Larry Lessig, that guy, he's the Harvard Law School professor. He's always telling me, like, Erica, you can't solve your problem until you solve the money in politics problem. And if you solve the money in politics problem, but you don't have a product that you want people to buy, you still haven't solved the problem. You have to do them both simultaneously. And I think that good ideas can overcome money. And if you get enough of those happening in individual races, then you can tilt the whole thing. And there's also, anyway, that's what I think.
We have a great briefing about how states can take on super PACs and use the state corporate law to do that. So I would encourage you all to check that out because it's viable and it's also gaining traction. So maybe we can have both. Um, Now I'd like to pitch to Nelson Betancourt.
Thank you. Erica, I have a question for you. Do you or your group support the National Infrastructure Bank? That's HR 5356, which currently has 58 sponsors.
We have not taken a position on it. I assume it's the infrastructure bank that
National Infrastructure Bank.
Yeah, it's outside of our purview, Nelson.
Because it will definitely help people, with jobs that are going to be paying very, very good high wages, and I think this is a group that you should really contact or at least find out what they're doing.
So the National Infrastructure Bank would be an entity to pay for things that
infrastructure. Yes,
right.
Only infrastructure.
Right, but so we don't take positions on government spending. So it's not that it's not a good idea. It's that our organizational capacity would not be focused on that.
I understand. But in terms of like, if you're really interested in raising how much money the working people are making, this is a group or this is an initiative that if it becomes law can help to bring that up,
So I think that sounds great, but it is it's oriented around how the money is going to be spent, which is not what we do. We would rather pass a tax law that made people who work everywhere be able to make the living that they need, not just that. It sounds wonderful. It has nothing to do with whether or not I think it sounds like a great idea. It's just outside. We are so focused, Nelson, and we are literally focused on making rich people pay higher taxes and moving the tax system around so it creates the incentives that we want to get people paid on the front end and to get the stuff we need on the back end. So it's a very narrow focus. Do you see what I'm saying? So we can't do all the rest.
I got it. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nelson. If you'd like to put that in the chat, I'm sure our members would like to look into that too. Lynn Carlson, you're up.
Hi, thank you so much, Erica. This is stuff I've been thinking about for quite some time. My entire life, my entire adult life, I've been watching the slow demise of all sorts of laws in government. And I was trying to take notes while you were talking. I'll be brief. You talked about a surtax over $2 million and up. That
with the first dollar of the second million. So when you make 1 million at $1, you're going to pay 5% on that next dollar.
Okay. $1 on first million, 5% on the next million. And then it just keeps going up if they're billionaires or trillionaires.
Well, the billionaires, keep in mind, billionaires don't have any income. And so this is the easiest thing to implement is this income tax change. The biggest problem is billionaires. This doesn't deal with the billionaire problem. Billionaires don't tend to have income. They have a big bucket of money and then they borrow against that money. So they never have realizable income. So this unfortunately only deals with rich people who have an income. It doesn't really deal with billionaires.
Okay. So to get to their wealth, we would have to be taxing the corporations as well.
We would have to be taxing the corporations and them and more. Look, what we really need to do with the billionaires and the trillionaires is to treat them like monopolistic corporations and break up their wealth. I mean, that's what we need to do.
Yes.
But what we are going to do in the short term is we're going to try to put together an interstate compact that's a wealth tax. So do some kind of 5 to 10% wealth tax and have it implemented around a bunch of states so it doesn't have a constitutional problem. There's a bunch of trust and estates reform. We've got a bill doing that. So the answer to the billionaire problem is multiple pieces of legislation, some of which nobody has even imagined yet, because the fact of the matter is there's been a huge amount of scholarship done on how to prevent an oligarchy. There's not a huge amount of scholarship done on how to dismantle one once it exists, which is why the last bucket of stuff that we want to do, that number 5, billionaires are better than, democracy is better than billionaires. What we want is a presidential candidate to announce that they will launch a 9/11 style commission on oligarchical wealth and resilient democracy. So you know that the president coming in has admitted that there is a problem and has committed to a process through which to solve the problem. What Patriotic Millionaires will do is a project in the 2 years in advance of a president going into office where we will pull together all of the best scholarship around how to deal with the oligarchy so we can hand it to the presidential commission so they can then do it officially, so they can then make a set of policy recommendations.
Okay, thank you very much. I guess I'm just thinking about the AI push right now and how it's completely unregulated. It's completely unregulated. I mean, this is just getting shoved down everyone's throats.
Oh my God. Listen, my friend's kid is in 9th grade. Some guy downloaded software and turned a video of a bunch of girls in the high school into porn. And the school doesn't know what to do about it. The police don't know what to do about it. The servers in Grand Cayman, 100%.
Yeah.
You know, the AI piece that we worry about is its effect on the labor market, which is why the bill that we want to do, which is it'll be an excise tax on major corporations that pay less than the median cost of living for a single adult with no children. But what will happen is the economy changes and the labor market changes. You will move that number. So the tax penalty will apply to people who pay less than the median cost of living for a single adult with one child, a single adult with no child. So you have built into the law itself the ability to move it as the labor market moves.
Okay. Well, I just want to go back to if I try to have a convincing discussion with someone about why this is good, you get charged $1 on your first million, and then you said 5% after that, or
so your first million, nothing happens.
Nothing happens.
Beginning on this first dollar of your second million,
okay,
you pay 5% surtax. On the next million after that, it's a 10% surtax.
Okay.
Then it levels out there. It doesn't go up beyond that.
Okay. But it is taxed on all the money, not just
all the money.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Ordinary income, capital gains. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for your work. This is wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll circulate the full Money Agenda PDF. It was also part of the event registration link, but we'll circulate that out with the other amazing recommendations that came from the chat, and anything else Erica and Jonah, am I getting your name right?
That's okay. It's Jacob.
Jacob, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Erica and Jacob would like to show our members or have them show others to help get this cause pushed forward. We're at 5:17, so unfortunately, I think we have to let Erica go, but this was a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for your candor and your anger and your urgency. I think that actually is like cause for optimism and hope for a lot of people. So I appreciate that beyond just the information you shared and the work that you've been doing.
Well, thank you so much, Shio. I'm delighted to have been with you. And I mean, this is the thing. Let me just leave you with this. This is not complicated. It's math. We got the math wrong. We can get the math right. We got some people figuring out that the math needs to be gotten right. Let's just get the math right. Let's go talk to them. Let's tell the people that they're not getting the math right, that they don't get to be in office anymore. God bless them. Thanks for their service. They sucked. They don't get to be.
Hallelujah.
I mean, let's just move ahead. We got a couple of years, right? This is so doable. I mean, I talk to these people all day long, every day. This is doable. It's doable. Yeah. So let's just get out there and do it. And the time is now. It's fine. And then I'll be better off. Everybody can get back to business.
Yep.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Yes.